Welcome, my name is Anna Nolan. I'm the principal here at Wilson, in case we haven't met. And Erica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Erica Ginneman. I run Natick Together for Youth, which is a substance abuse coalition in Natick that's been in existence for at least 4 years. There's been a coalition here for longer than that. But today, my hat is as a parenting educator, where I've worked at Families First Parenting Program for 5 years, developing parenting education programs.
And it's been a pleasure for me to be able to parent our community with Erica and to do these kinds of workshops together, because I'm the feeder program, if you will, to Erica's work at the high school level, right? So if we do our job well at the middle level, then Erica has fewer clients at the high school. So that's kind of the thinking. So we want to make sure that you get a chance to talk to each other and do a little bit of work that you may not make time for yourself to do as a busy parent day to day around getting ready to be effective middle school parents. So you will walk out of here today with some stuff done. Doesn't that feel good? Check off the list, right? So while you're not home doing laundry, you are getting stuff done here today. So in your handouts, there was a sheet there called the 400 developmental assets, no, 40. And this is just a checklist to help you think about the kinds of skills that your students and you might need. Now I'm going to post everything that is here for everybody on both Kennedy and Wilson websites. And I just want to say a few things about the kind of goals and assumptions for our conversations today. We assume, as we talk with each other here today, and as educators and as parents, we need to make a little pinky swear partnership that we assume the best assumptions about each other. That all parents care about their kids, and all educators care about children. And sometimes the conflicts come when there's like a miscommunication or a mismatch. So let's just all pinky swear now that this is about, we all know we all deeply care about kids, okay? And that you can come in this room and have discussions that are honest and open, and no one is going to criticize you, right? So I don't know this woman here, but she shares something with me. I'm not going to be like, oh my God, did you hear what that woman said about parenting? I'm not going to say that. We're not going to do that to each other here today. Today, we're going to acknowledge that parenting is hard and lonely sometimes, and that if we're going to really be a community, we have to support each other through these difficult times, and that's what today is. We're practicing the very things we want our kids to do and be able to do on their own. So we're assuming. Yes, sir.
Can I be judgmental tomorrow?
Yes, sir. On your own time, you may. That, too, is a developmental asset of a different nature, right? But all parents do the best job that they can do. We're going to assume that, that people need and want help relating to how to be better parents. That's why you're all here. That's why I'm here. That's why, you know, we talk the way we talk all the time. And that parents can change their behavior based on information that they learn, right? Parenting is something we're all working out day to day. There are some tried and true strategies, but they change, and your child's going to change, and you're going to have to expand your bag of tricks. We hope to give you some things that help with that today. But you are the #1 influence in your child's lives, right? There's been a lot of research lately about, oh, peers have more influence, etc. That's parallel research to the huge influence that families have on kids. So don't forget that while your children are going to tell you that you're the least important people in their lives, you are the most important. And that strengthening this family and building resiliency will help prevent risky behaviors down the line. So this is where Erica and I hold hands and try to do work together. So these are our working assumptions. Now I'm going to ask you to turn to each other and talk about these developmental assets. What does your child have? Or children in your kids' circle, what do you see them possessing and not possessing?
And what were some thoughts or observations that you had about these developmental assets?
Well, it was interesting because, you know,
Likewise.
what was exactly your question? Because we discussed a couple of different
My question was, what was your did you have reactions to the developmental assets?
Well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, everybody has different age kids too, but it really does come down to these 4 external assets are so important because we as parents, we're all dealing with the same thing, but we're not necessarily having the same consequence or the same outcome, and it's harder to be the parent, to be the one that, oh, you're so strict and you're so tough, and, you know, I mean, it's harder to be the one that everybody doesn't like you, they think you're strange or, you know, strict or whatever. Yeah, and I mean, you just, and it makes, oh, everybody else is doing that, why can't I? I mean, how much do we, and what you have to realize, you feel bad, because you're like, oh, my kids miss out, I want them to be on the outskirts. But at the same time, you gotta step back and say, you know what, this is probably half BS. So, you know, say, you know, tell me, give me 5 parents that say, yes, their kid can do this, and give me their phone numbers, I'll call them right now. So, you know, I mean, we have to find ways that we can all, if we are really, it's harder to be the strict parent. It's harder to keep them in line. It's so much easier to say, yeah, go, you know. And so we need to find ways to support each other and to really say, it's okay to be the bad guy.
Well, just jump right into that.
I know,
right?
I mean, this was the very conversation that about 4 years ago brought us all together as community members, because I hear from all of you, like, I'm the only one who does this, I feel so lonely. It came when cell phones started to really hit the middle school at 5th grade, right?
Yep.
I mean, we're all appalled, like, who's giving their cell phones to 5th grade? Now everybody is giving them, you know, so that's tough. I mean, I've got a 4th grader right now, so, you know, guess what the conversation about holidays is. And, you know, all I've got is more knowledge of more people saying what you just said, which is that they don't want their kids having that. And so we started getting parents together from days like this and times like this, where you could all get together as a friend group and say, we don't roll that way.
We can gang up on each other.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Gang up is a strong word, but yes. Right.
But you know, what I would say about that is, you know, it would be wonderful if everybody in this room could agree on, you know, what age to give kids cell phones, or at what point when your children are in high school. And I'm sorry, but I do work a lot with high school kids, and I have 2 older young adult children, so I can fast forward this. It would be wonderful if all of us could agree that this is how we're going to do it. It is not going to happen. It is not going to happen. It's really up to you. And yes, you can look to your peers for support, and for as long as that support is there, that's going to be wonderful. But if it's something that's really important to you, if it's a value that's really important to you, you don't want your child going to an empty house, and that's your value, you're going to have to stick to your guns no matter what anybody else says. And I think Rue Vickery said it best when she said, there are going to be times you're going to say no, and you're just going to have to say no. So as much as we'd like all to be able to kind of get together and sing Kumbaya, we don't have the same kids. And you know, that's a lot about what we're going to be talking about today.
Right. So we hope you leave here today with a few things. So we give you the developmental asset checklist, not because we want you to go home and like take a little survey with your kids and say, oh, you got this, you don't have this. Don't do that, okay? This is just, you know, when you use a term like resiliency, right, that's a big term, and you might say to yourself, well, what does that mean to me day to day? And so we tried to give you this developmental asset checklist so that you could kind of see, okay, so these are ways that we can build up kids' resiliency, working on specific areas of resiliency practice, so to speak. This is the one for 12 to 18-year-olds. The website there also will lead you to ones for 0 to 5 and 5 to 10, and you can go see. But we thought this one would be the one that would be most helpful to you, since it's kind of like the end goal, right? These are the developmental assets we want for our high schoolers. So we want you to know about resiliency and know about how that works with the homeschool partnership. We want you to see school as a good place where kids can take risks, small risks, that allow them to practice and build and put sort of social capital in the bank, so that when it comes time to the big risks that Erica sees at the high school level, right, to drink or not to drink, to take that risky behavior that is more high school, go in the car with, you know, do something at someone's house with. These are the things that you've built up to all along, and that school, middle school, can be a good place to do that. And to talk about some components of parent-child interactions about how do you parent around some of these little issues and big issues, and talk about risk-taking and parenting. So that's what we hope you get out of today. We also hope that you get a little time to do some thinking that you might not make time to do otherwise. If you asked me when was the last Saturday I sat down and thought about my family values, I would laugh because I, like you, I'm very busy. I'm running carpool, I'm coaching soccer, I'm doing those things, and I'm working here in your community. So there's a lot going on, and I bet you don't take time to sit down and think about those things. Made-for-TV movies make you think that husbands, wives, partners sit down and have these amazing conversations over dinner, and where all the family values become clear with background music. That's not how it works in real life, and so we want to give you some think time. We talked about our working assumptions, so we're going to be kind to each other and supportive. Here is a working definition of resiliency, just so that that big R word, we define it, that it's the ability to spring back from and successfully adapt to adversity. Sometimes there's positive adversity and sometimes there's negative adversity. All of it builds resiliency in one way or the other. And there's a lot of discussion in social media, psychiatry, sociology about risk and resiliency. But there's not a lot of new ideas out there. My degree from umpty-9 years ago is in risk and prevention with adolescent youth. Everybody talks about adolescence with risk and resiliency in mind. But we need to have this foundation belief that young people can bounce back from adversities and can be stronger for it. And that many of you could look back on your life and think about times of stress or difficulty that made you that much stronger. Sometimes they can be devastating too. And then how do you pick up from that devastation and move on?
Is that the definition of positive adversity?
Positive adversity, yes.
Is that what you meant by there are positive and negative? Because it seems like adversity is always sort of negative, but
You're right.
outcome will be positive?
Yes, I don't see adversity as necessarily negative.
Okay.
But I am a middle school educator and we are a different breed. There's just there's no question. I see every possible bad thing that happens as a potential for something good. And that's how you stay sane when you work with 1,000 adolescents every day. So you have to believe that, and I hope as parents you believe that too, because your children are wholly good and they're going to have difficult times. And they're going to make them wholly stronger. So if you keep that in mind, it keeps you from the doldrums, it keeps you from sadness. I say this, I'm a parent too. There are times when I want to cry my eyes out over the stress I'm experiencing with my kids. So, I sound very zen. When it's with my own parents, I call Erica or something, help me. So it's harder with your own children. So what does this have to do with your family values, you might be saying? In your book list that I gave out at the beginning of the conference, there's some really good books that help you to think about raising resilient children and referencing that with your family values. But to put those things in a nutshell, you define, as Erica said, what your values are for your family. Kids need you to do that. Because when they're out there interacting in the world, they have to have something that they can rely on from their first teachers, right? That's you. And if those things aren't clearly spelled out by you, not like you have a family meeting and you hand out talking points, but that you have discussed with students around certain social issues and certain expectations for your family, if it's not clear to kids what those are, they are that much more sprawling when they get into an environment like middle school, which brings all kinds of complexities, right? A whole new layer of complexity comes for socializing and academics. So you do need to be the voice of consistency around your family values. They're going to hate your guts about it sometimes, but they need you to be that clear. That's the first frame of reference that they have. You lay out the non-negotiables and they will rail against them, but it's reassuring at the same time that if that's all they've got to rail about, good. That's perfect. But your family values will cause conflicts, right? Because conflict happens. We don't have exactly the same expectations as you do, and then this family doesn't have it, and this. If there's no conflict, I'm more worried about that than if there is conflict. And the conflict can be really good, and you can teach them how to take on that next big conflict with a little social capital in the bank. So that's what is important about values and resiliency. I bet right now you could turn to each other and talk about what are the values that your parents taught you. What's the thing that you take away from your parents? And I think you have a handout about this, which is called
Maybe not.
The value of parenting, like what?
My family preference.
Teaching children values.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Teaching children values, that one.
And what is the first question on there?
Think about one value important to what you've.
Okay, so one of the things that happens to us as parents is we may, I don't know about you, I'll speak about myself, but I wanted to do this parenting thing better than my parents. I wanted to, you know, just be that much more effective, right? So that's a layer of stress we put on ourselves, right? Parenting is a science that we learn now, right? Whereas my parents, it was mostly benign neglect. I'm one of 9 girls. You know, it was just like, get through, right? Now, I'm sure it was more difficult than that, but that certainly my father did not sit down and break it down with me about the school dance and why I was crying. He just didn't, right? My mother didn't really either. So I felt like I will do this better, but at the same time, I put this like anxious thing over my kids, right? Like, let's talk about the dance. Let's, you know, oh Ethan, let's break that down, you know? Like, let me be all principal on you over here. And you do it too, right? Because you have a legacy of parenting that came to you. And so you maybe want to do it better, or you want to keep it exactly the same, right? Maybe you had a wholly positive childhood. It's glowing in your memory now. There was never an issue. It's like Hallmark all the way. And so inertia
I
might...
want to see the hand if I got that.
No, you ended pretty good.
Some people do.
All right, so turn and talk to each other. What are the values? What are the things that are just not negotiable for you? That you just feel like that's a value I've taken and I'd like to carry it through. So talk to each other for a couple minutes about that. Okay, so any brave souls want to share some values that you feel you want to keep alive and well?
I wish we had more weight, but I just thought of another value.
Anyone want to share? Yes, sir.
I thought it was just probably the general values that we all share in common, and they transcend culture, creed, whatever, honesty, integrity, compassion, empathy.
That's interesting.
We all discussed, you know, resiliency also. You have to be, everyone in their life faces obstacles, and we're all going to be defeated at some point, but that's part of the human spirit is that we rise up, we overcome, we learn, and go on.
You showed it. I don't know.
So that's a general values shared. Anybody else have different kinds of conversations?
I'm going to repeat what you said because that was so funny. She said she remembers in 3rd grade that her teacher walked the whole class outside and said, we're going to bury our I can't.
I can't, you know, because
I can't do this.
I can't. And so she brought us all out with spoons. We all had metal spoons. And we dug in it was like behind the baseball stadium thing. We all dug a little hole and we buried our I can'ts and we covered it up and she said a little like, you know, closing prayer or whatever. In class, you know, if anyone said I can't, she's like, oh no, that's
Yeah, those are out there.
buried up there. Try that again. Wow. Try to rephrase that.
Yeah.
I think also it just shows that today everything is presented to our kids as disposable. Getting a part-time job, starting a team, joining the club, getting a job, marriage. You know, I mean, there's things that are more acceptable today than I think when we were younger were acceptable. You were kind of like, oh, really? You know, I think everybody, it's great that people have become so much more accepting of other different people, but at the same time, I think it's reiterated to our children that, you know what? Oh, you don't want to do that? Okay, try something else. You know, oh, it doesn't matter your teammates are depending on you and you're the best on the team or the worst on the team, you know. Just try something else. Oh, you don't like that? Oh, it's making you sad? Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. So I'm hearing you say, I think, that the piece about commitment not being as important as happiness, that we're focusing on happiness over responsibility and commitment. Okay, great. Other conversations that came up?
So we were both just realizing that so far from being a Hallmark card, that we start talking about our parents and our families, and we're like, yeah, that didn't go too well.
Also, even talking with our own parents about how we're raising our kids. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but my parents are like appalled at what the kids do today. They can't believe it, that you can, look at me, you have cell phone, just like you said. And, they don't understand. So it's hard to, get that you have one generation telling you, we did it this way and it worked fine, and you have another generation telling you, you know what, everybody else is doing it. So it's like you have to kind of bridge that for yourself and be the parent and be the work for safety for the kids. It's hard though.
It is hard, it is hard. And we're less homogeneous than we ever have been before, right? So as society becomes more diverse, there's where I grew up, like I told you, we could all say, well, this is the expectation in this town. You can't say that. You can't. There's different cultures, there's different generations of parents, coming together. You could have, my father has been married a couple times. He's got twin 20-year-olds, and he's got me, a big bad 40-year-old. So there's, even within one man, there's two generations of parenting. There's a lot of differences that people have to overcome, which is why your family values have to be clear. A common experience in that discussion of family values is that you're not quite sure which ones you want to put out there, right? So that's the non-discussion is sometimes worse than the discussion. And I just encourage you to think with your parenting partner, or if you're parenting alone, what are those deal breaker things going to be for me? Because you don't want to be figuring that out when you're in the situation, right? Because then it's just a bunch of excuses my mother and father are telling me to make me either A, feel better, or to make me do something I don't want to do. Versus if this is the message all along, when you come up to the new conflict, let's see how your conflict fits with our family values. So it's important to reflect in that way. Did you want to add anything?
I was thinking about a conflict like that. I wanted an example, and I came up with one of my own. And it was about a conflict with my spouse. And it was a conflict about paying for college. And it was a huge family value issue, because my family paid for college and his family did not. And so in raising our kids and in talking about, so how's this going to go financially, he's saying they're going to take out loans, and I'm saying over my dead body. I mean, this is the most important thing my parents did. They had 5 kids, they got divorced, everything fell apart, but we did get a college education. And boy, oh boy, was that really a hard one for us to negotiate, right? So, I mean, I was just trying, and I will tell you, it's probably the only one we ever had that was so extreme. Others we're so on the same page, but that was a really extreme one. So just an example, of here you are, you're trying to do your best, you have your beliefs, and whoa, all of a sudden you don't agree on something. So.
So I want to make the case that school is a great place, particularly at the middle school level, because children are old enough to be doing some independent thinking, and their brains are changing to become the kind of reasoning, argumentative people that can have their own opinion and their own passion about things. Now, I'm not saying my 6-year-old gives me plenty of opinion and passion too, but there's, the stakes are a little bit higher when you have middle school kids. So I do want to say to you that, first of all, second only to infancy, the brain of the adolescent changes so fast at this time. This is the second greatest time of change. So remember that first year of life? It's happening right now for like 4 years. Total brain overhaul. So if you're saying to yourself, what happened to the person that I thought I once knew, that's why, okay? And there's a ton of things happening, but if the value frame is consistent, then the child feels less out of control. So just when you think you want to pull your eyeballs out of your sockets because they're making you nuts, that's when you should bear down and stay strong with the family values that you've put out. But school allows us for a lot of places to test and grow their resiliency, and to test and grow your parenting. Because you don't want the first time you're dealing with this to be like when they've had a drink at a party and you're trying to deal with the fallout of that. You want it to be when they branch out coming to 5th grade, right? Making new friends, trying new clubs, self-advocating with teachers, right? This is the first time where they might be able to go to their teachers and say, I need X or Y, and you can help support that. or taking on different styles and tastes and opinions. You know, Erica gave the example in the last seminar that, you know, when we were talking about not judging each other in our parenting, she said, you know, you may be judging this parent because her kid's got blue hair, and you're like, what's up with that? Who would let their kid do that? But maybe that was the lesser risk that that family had to take, you know, so it's a great example, you know, that you're allowing your child to explore certain things. And I mean, I had bright dyed hair in high school. I turned out okay. Really.
And I didn't know that when I gave the example.
Yeah, I was a hair experiment, you know. So, and I battled with my parents about what was okay and not. And, you know, I remember my father vividly saying to me on Easter Sunday, I'm not going to sit with you in that row because your mohawk and red whatever is not something I can live with at church right now. And I was like, well, that is fine. And I sat there, and, you know, we got it done. Peer conflicts, right? It's going to be the worst thing that ever happened to you in your entire life, the kid thinks, right? But you can help them overcome that and rationalize. And mistakes, successes, and failures, all of those build resiliency. And there is this temptation with modern parenting to kind of smooth the path so much so that there's not a lot of the pain we had. And I link that personally to the rising number of anxiety cases that we have in the school, because the families are so worried about not having risks happen that new risks happen, new problems arise. You can't smooth the path for them. Better yet, teach them how to recover from the risks, to recover from the pain, and to be strong as a result of that. I bet you can all think back to difficult times where you learned valuable lessons. Sometimes they can be devastating. I do want to say that. I don't want to sound all Pollyanna and, you know, oh, everything is a good risk. There are times that it's devastating, but even that you can grow from and be a stronger person. I do want to put down that without exception, Kennedy, Wilson, the parent and school team is really important and vital. And a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to bother you with those things. I don't want to, you know, we don't want to bug the school. Bug us, that's our job. And what if we're missing something? What if we can be more collaborative around something? We are your team, so you should reach out to us as much as you can. If we can't help with it, we'll let you know. Like if this is like a home thing, like we're going to say, we're not able to do that. Like I had a parent email me recently, and she would like me to like run all the laptop reports on the kid and tell me what's happening at home on the home hours, and then put in some guidelines for how much she can use it at home and I said, I'll definitely tell you what she's looking at. If that's, you know, that's my pledge to you, that we'll run the filter report and I'll show you that. But I can't define what hours and when and how. That's got to be a you thing. Like, I'll define it when she's with me, but you've got to do that. And she's like, well, I don't want to get in the battle. And I said, you have to get in the battle. Yeah, you have to. And this is, therefore, she's sneaking around and you can't tell what she's on. So, you know, let's work together on this. So we'll tell you if it's something that we can't help with. And the great news is that every day is a new day, right? Middle school educators in particular, we don't hold grudges. And we're not, like, every time we're going to see you the next time, it's like, all right, new day, new parent situation, new kid. That's what learning is. Like, there's no problem if you email us 500 times. We're here for you. That said, if you all email me 500 times, I won't have any life whatsoever. No, I'm kidding. But please, you know, contact us. We're here to help. So again, if you let your child take smaller risks, it helps to build their efficacy down the line, right? So if you let your child have a small failure, I'll give you a really great example. 80 people a day bring in forgotten items at Wilson Middle School. They leave it in the front, right? I got to tell you, oftentimes it's the same parents coming over and over. And I do take the opportunity, and I'm walking over here not because Maureen is one of those parents, but because I know her. So I'm saying, Maureen, you know, I got to tell you, I see you here 5 days a week dropping off the band instruments. Can I help with that in some way? And the parent will usually say, well, unless you're going to come get it from my house. And I say, what would be the worst thing that happens to said child if the band instrument doesn't come? Well, she doesn't want to get yelled at by the teacher. And I would say, teachers rarely are screaming like, hey, why don't you have your band instrument? But there might be a little bit of like, uh-oh, I'm not prepared to work. But that one time might be more effective than Maureen dropping it off 600 times. And so that's a small risk, a silly little example, but it's the starting stuff of building the resilience, right? If you always bring their homework when they forget it, will they learn to bring their homework? Probably not. So it's those little things that also builds the tough skin. I'm going to bet you that the band teacher is not going to publicly humiliate, stick them in the stocks, and public flogging. They're going to feel it that way though, and so you're going to have to go through the help them down from the passionate sadness part later, and that processing those risks with teachers and parents and students helps you again push your values. It's important to us that you be responsible and that you take responsibility for your stuff. I'll help you when it really, really counts and you're really going to hurt yourself. But in this one, you're on your own, buddy. You got to deal with it. So that's just one example of how you can grow resilience with kids. So Erica's going to tell you. So you come home with this passionate kid who's had this awful situation. You're in it, right? Then what? What do I do? How do I help my child through this crisis? We used the school dance as the last example. Should we use that again?
We can use that again.
Okay. So we have a saying in middle school, it's not a school dance until the girls are crying and the boys are throwing punches. Like that's pretty much, And
I don't go to them.
And you should go to school, you should let them go to school dances in 7th and 8th grade. I'm joking, they don't throw punches. They do, there is crying. There is crying.
No punching,
Even
some
if
crying.
they stood around and watched each other chew gum, there would be crying. So that's, I just need you to know that. Because everything is a big deal. Everything is huge, right? My hair didn't come out exactly the way I wanted it, or I couldn't do the same breakdancing moves that he could do. This is the stuff of, worry at dances. It is good for them to do it though, because how many of you had parents who kicked your kids, or your parents kicked your kids out, and you saw them maybe once a day on Saturdays? Like they sent you out to the yard, right? And you went and you played, and they rang the dinner bell and you came back. Do you remember that? How many people do that with their kids now?
Not every day.
Yeah.
But I think that's what the helicopter parenting and stuff is it's deconstructing the children and giving them less coping skills. If you look at any research done on kids who are just graduated from college, there is the anxiety that they are feeling is 10 times worse than any prior generation because they weren't necessarily left to fall.
In
and to
authentic
figure it out.
social situations, right, like the school dance, or we talk about Wildcat Night here because you play a basketball game. What do you do as a person in the stands? You watch. It's boring, right? You just sit there. So they don't know how to small talk. So what I do after Wildcat Night is I take up emails and phone calls that go something like this. Well, my daughter was in the stands, and so-and-so asked so-and-so to go to the bathroom together, and they didn't ask her, and that's exclusion, and I want a bullying report on that. But the reason that happens is because there's not a lot of authentic chill time for kids, right? Dances are one way. So I come home, I'm the kid who didn't get asked to go to the bathroom. What do you do with me, Erica? How do you parent me?
Wow.
I'm hysterical, my life is over, I have no friends.
So I'm told, because it was a long time ago that my kids were in middle school, that I need to calm them down. But the part I do remember, I don't remember the high drama, but I do remember the calming them down part. So what you actually have to do is you have to do the problem-solving technique. And the problem-solving technique goes like this. What's the problem? What happened? So you're asking your child, right? What happened? And then they tell you, and then you say, well, what could you have done about it? And maybe they'll give you one suggestion, maybe they'll give you 5 suggestions, and you say, well, which one would you think would have worked the best? Or if it's something in the future, so it doesn't happen again. What would you like to try, right? And then they say, well, I think I might try, this one. Okay, so off they go and they try it, right? And they come back, and if it doesn't work, they're going to blame you, right? And so then you're going to say, but you had, a couple of other ideas. What's another thing that you could try? Do you want to try that? And then off they go, and guess what? They have success. And when they have success, and they figured out how to solve the problem themselves, because they have the answers. We're all tempted to solve that problem, right? I mean, that is where this helicopter issue in college comes from, is the fact that college administrators are dealing with kids who have had parents who have solved issues for them. They get to college, they don't get along with their roommate. They've got everybody in the entire university on the phone, right, trying to figure this out. And the bottom line is, your daughter or son likes their roommate, but you know, they left their socks in the middle of the floor, and it wasn't a big catastrophe. So basically, you have to teach them how to solve the problem themselves. So if they have a success, you're building their resiliency, right? So you want to check back in with them and make sure that they've come up with something that feels good to them. And then they feel like they have a success and money in the bank.
And Eric always says at bedtime, right? It was a good time.
That was a good time with my daughter that would be willing to do this with me. My other one wouldn't have been so chatty about it. Anna says in the car works for her with her son. So, you know the times that your children are feeling the most vulnerable and they're the most approachable, and those are the times that you can sort of have a conversation like this and really help them through it, rather than doing what we're all tempted to do, which is solve it for them, right? Tell them what to do. Well, as soon as you tell your child what to do, they're going to tell you why it's not going to work, right? So if you haven't had that experience already, try it just to prove it.
Erica, would you also say that, like, my generation or my parents were like, you know what, suck it up, it happens, but there is a fine line, and it's a very different world today.
Play in the oven.
Oh, wow.
It's like having to balance between suck it up and, oh my God, who should I call for you to fix this? And it's tough because you can see different parenting styles at work.
Well, that's why you have to ask your child.
Right.
Rather than trying to figure out who can I call,
Yeah.
how can I fix this, or I'm going to ignore this because, it might seem like the child who went to the bathroom with the other child was no big deal, suck it up, but that might have been your best friend. And, maybe you didn't know that was your child's best friend, or they were thinking that was their best friend. So you've got to have little conversations. And the better you are at having these little conversations now, as your kids get older, the easier it will be for them to think, okay, I can actually talk to my parent about this. And they're going to be reasonable in the response, because what kids say in high school is, I can't talk to my parent. And why is it? Because we're all giving them suggestions that don't work, right? So why bother? So, we want to walk our kids through this and really be helpful.
And you gave us a great segue, thank you, into sort of how parenting style and versus kids' needs. And Erica has some points to make about where your temperament and your children's temperament meet. I do this with my staff every year when we have new staff and new teams, because it's really important, and this is like based on Myers-Briggs kinds of thinking, right? So we have those kinds of surveys if you're interested. But if you are a North person, you're someone who's like, your slogan would be the Nike slogan, right? Just do it, right? So I am of that persuasion. I'm a do-it person, right? But I parent children who are different from me. They're not do-it people. I am married to a non-do-it person. So these are the things that you have to know when you are parenting. So if you're a North person, you just do it. If you're South, you want to look at the big picture. You want to see all the possibilities before you just take a very methodical approach there. East wants to know about feelings. Has everyone's feelings been checked into? It's really important to me that I hear people's emotional reaction to this, and then we'll take some actions. And West, don't care about the big picture. Don't care about the action. I want to know the who, what, when, where, and why before I move anywhere. Something to ponder. Now, how many of you have children who do not fit in the same category as you do? In your mind, if you were to sum them up. Okay, it's a simple thing, but when I run this with my staff, they say it's the deal breaker for them. Like, it helps them to understand how to work with their partner, right? And then we go on and we do a little Myers-Briggs thing, and we find out, here's the places that we meet and here's the places that we don't. Now, you can do that with your kids. Good luck doing that, but making them take a Myers-Briggs or something. But it's something to take into mind. If you're just sitting there giving you're like me, well, do this, Ethan, do this. Well, why don't you do this? And he's saying, Mom, I want to hear about this, and then I want to hear about this. I have to push my own style down in order to understand his. And are you able to do that? So that's something to ponder about yourself. And then how many of you parent with a partner who has a different temperament than you do? Okay. Not small, right, Erica?
Not small, but also very helpful, because if you have a child who has a similar temperament to your partner, then they can step in and explain your child to you, because there are times when you're just not going to get it. You know, you're going to look at your child and say, who is this child? I don't understand them. And you may not understand them, because, you know, if you're not a super social person and you have a very social child, that's going to be hard to get, right? Or if you have a very quiet child and you're a very social person, that's going to be hard to get. So if you have a quiet and a quiet, use some coaching from the partner that you have. And that will really help you all the way through.
You know, this is certainly a challenge for me, and Erica said it was a challenge for her. You know, I have a son who is very different from me. I have a daughter who's just like me. That's challenging in another way.
Yes, it is.
You know, that I just need to accept. And, you know, I put myself out there because I want you to accept this for yourself, too, that you've got to give yourself a break. If you are having a hard time, you know, connecting fully with your child's perspective, that's okay. The question is, are you making the framework available, the communication way that your family is going to do business? Is that clear to your child? Because if that is, you can come together and have those conversations. And, you know, I'm a big proponent of having dinner together every night. I know that's not feasible for every family, but it's those times where it's, you know, it's not negotiable in my home that you're going to participate in that conversation. How you participate is going to be different depending on the way my son does it versus the way my daughter does it versus my husband. You know, so that's something that's not negotiable to me. What are those things for you? You know, and we talked about a lot of the non-negotiable experiences that help to build that, but still respect temperament. We also gave out a book title for those of you interested in temperament, and it's actually not on the book list. I wish I put it there. It's a book called Quiet by Susan Cain. And it just speaks in depth about how our society right now is really on a kick about extroverted people, and what that means to be a less extroverted person in our current society.
What was the author's last name?
Cain, C-A-I-N. Just something to anyone, extrovert or not, or introvert, would enjoy this book. I think it's really helpful book about sort of where society is right now. Also in your materials is a set of parenting strategies that can go with your temperament versus your kid's temperament. So those things will be on our websites, as I said, if you didn't get those things. And so this is the punchline of the workshop as we head to the end. Erica's going to tie it together around risks.
I am, because I work at the high school. And at the high school, one of the programs that I do, and I don't do a lot of work with the kids, is if a child gets in trouble for a substance abuse issue at school or on school grounds, they come and see me. So I meet with the parent and I meet with the child a couple of times, and then I meet with the parent and the child together. And what I'm doing really is looking to see if there is a substance abuse problem. That's really what I'm looking for. So it's a real prevention strategy. But what I learn is that oftentimes the kids that I see are the risk takers. And so I'm trying to identify how to help support a risk taker take a risk that's healthier than drinking or doing drugs, right? Which is a very easy risk to take, right? Oftentimes an introvert will experiment with substances because it's comfortable and easy. Oftentimes an extrovert will experiment because it's comfortable and easy and fun, right? So what I'm looking for to do is I'm looking to sort of figure out what are the risks that are healthy and how can I encourage those. Again, if a child is taking a risk, their life is not going to be over, right? They're going to learn from it, and that's really the goal, is to have them learn from their mistake or their bad choice, basically.
So we talked a little bit about healthy risks and unhealthy risks, and so, you know, not to scare any fifth grade parents, so, you know, but like dances in the scheme of big risks, that's minimal risks, but can have major value in terms of setting the stage for how you process bigger risks later. And that's really, you know, you have to still decide, is your fifth grader ready for those things, you know, because the Cole Center does recreation, dance kinds of things.
And it's a big thing. Parents call me a lot about, like, do I send my kid to that? Is that something? And so you have to kind of feel that out and see how it is and hear from other families about what that is. I don't go to the Cole Center. I can tell you about dances here. Ro can tell you about dances at Kennedy. You know, but you have to kind of decide which things are healthy risks for your kid. And we are not going to do this time because I just don't think we have time and energy. But what we did was we talked about risks we took when we were young. Aren't you sad you're missing that? What are the things that you did which are playing in the back of your mind that you're either worried they will do or you hope they do, or maybe a mixture of the two? You took risks. And there were risks associated with your particular generation. You know, what were they? And, you know, what are the parallel ones for this generation? And how do you parent around that? So you're probably sitting here like, whew, we didn't have to talk about that. But you need to think about it yourself, right? What are the risks that you can live with? And how are you going to talk to your child when they ask you about drinking? Or when they ask you about you know, what you looked like in high school, or when did you date, or, you know, you're not going to be able to say things like when you got a cell phone because we were all,
But what I think is important to remember about risk taking is that there's a whole spectrum, right, about risks. So, you know, there are healthy risks, there are unhealthy risks, there are risks like, you know, getting a tattoo. That some of you may feel one way about, others of you may feel very differently about. If I say hitchhiking to you, for example, now you might think this is the worst thing in the world. Maybe you were a hitchhiker when you were younger. You know, so risks change over time. It became clear it wasn't so safe to hitchhike. But, you know, there is a spectrum, and the blue hair is a perfect example of a risk that someone was allowed to take, and it could have been a much bigger risk. Right? So it's just really think about it, and if you have a non-risk taker, try and encourage them to take a small risk, and if you have a risk taker, try and kind of walk through how it's going to go so that they're not taking a bigger risk than you're comfortable with.
And I think that one of the things that we talked about earlier in the session, or the previous session, is that when you're encouraging your children to take risks, so for instance, we use the example of running for student council, you know, we're not always going to be successful when we take those risks, right? That's part of life too. We're not always going to make the team. We're not always going to be class president. So walking your child through what are the what-ifs of the situation before the situation comes to resolution, so that it's not you as a parent making excuses to make the kid feel better. It's you preparing them in the beginning. You know, honey, you could run, and this could happen, or this could happen, and both have positive and negative outcomes. And talking about those things up front, unpacking the potential meanings here, helps you when whatever the outcome over here. And I pledge to you that both at Kennedy and Wilson, we do this with kids. When kids visit us in the office, before we send them off, we say, so what if someone asks you about this situation? How are you going to talk about it? Why were you here in the office? Let's talk through those challenges and what you might discuss. So we do that with them too, and if you're doing it and we're doing it, then they are much better prepared for whatever little unusual thing that happens because you've told them what might happen. So last slide, you know, please let go a little and let them fail in small ways so they can learn to be strong in big ways. I guess that's the bumper sticker takeaway here. And you certainly want to talk about partnering and hot buttons, right?
Well, I always just want to remind people that whatever you heard here, you need to talk about with who you're parenting with, right? So don't just keep this information to yourself, but share it with the person that you're parenting with, so that they know what you're thinking about and understand what you're thinking about.
And we are here as a resource. Call the school, call the parent network. You know, the parent network is a great sort of low risk way to get feedback on parenting from the people in your town. Like, you can go blog out in the world anywhere and put out parenting questions, right? You're not going to get the Natick way, right? And this is your community. So if you're on there together, you will have a better chance of supporting each other. You know, at the soccer field, you know, you can get a lot of business done. You can get a lot of good advice walking up and down the field, or at the drama event, or, you know, at a math team or speech team competition. see each other as resources. You are struggling with the same issues and you are experiencing the same joy. And the more we can reach out and support each other, just imagine what life at Natick High School is going to be like if we get these routines going now, right? When you're faced with that, you know, big party at Mrs. Alex's house, just you know, because you chatted with her earlier, that she's going to set certain limits and she's going to back your values and she's going to be just as worried about it as you are. You know, so those are the kinds of connections that I hope we make here today and that you leave thinking about. Please fill out the reflection so that we know how we did here. And thanks for coming and spending a Sunday with us.